Today we're going to be diving into one of the best ways that I've found to power pretty much any camping setup, whether it's a truck camper, a van, or even a car camping setup. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Talon and I make new videos every single week. So if you're into camping gear and outdoor adventure videos, then consider subscribing because there's a lot more coming. I am fresh off of about a week-long trip in this vehicle right here, and I'm currently sitting in my anti-shanty dwell shell. This is definitely my preferred setup for a vehicle of this size, and when it came to getting this thing dialed in and set up, I knew I needed a really good power system because there's a lot of stuff that I use that requires power while I'm out on week-long trips. Now previously I was using this guy right here, the DJI Power 1000. However, DJI is constantly innovating and they have released something about twice the size of this, and I had exclusive access to use this new power system, and it is what has been in my truck powering everything that you guys have been seeing in recent videos for the past month or so. But they're finally releasing, and this is the new unit right here, the DJI Power 2000. Now, before we dive into the reason that I chose a battery like this, let's actually talk about some of the things that I use in this setup that requires power on pretty much a daily basis when I'm on the road. First and foremost, probably the most important thing is my lighting setup in here. I currently have 3 different kingpin lights down on the bottom. They have both a red and a white mode, and then I even have a smaller version up top in the dwelling portion of this camper. Let me actually flick these on right now. I typically leave them in the red mode. They do have a dimmer switch, but on full brightness, as you can see, they are only drawing about 34 watts, 35 watts. So really not crazy power consuming, and a battery of this size can run them for quite a long time. Occasionally when I am in hot climates, I am running a Dometic fan that is found up in the dwelling portion of this camper as well. I'm typically only running that thing for a few hours at a time, so that is also not really gonna put a dent in this battery. I also have a few USB plugs up in the bed area, and of course I am charging my phone every single night, as well as any other accessories that I might have up there, like a ton of cameras, tablets, computers, and everything that I use to create videos like this one right here. And then down below here, I have some things that are also kind of a necessity for me and what I do. Right here, I have my Starlink Mini, and I'm opting to use this thing with a USB-C power cord. So this thing typically rides on the front of my truck in between my 2 storage cases. And then I run this cable in through the back window here and can plug that into any of the 4 USB ports. This thing doesn't draw a ton of power, but since I have it on all the time, I want it to be able to draw as much power as it needs. So typically I have this thing plugged into one of those 140 ports. Another absolute necessity for me is of course a refrigerator. So right over here to my left, I have the Iceco APL 35, and this has been my go-to fridge for quite a while now. I believe I'm coming up on maybe a year or a year and a half of owning this thing, and I'm constantly trying to get creative with different ways to power it with secondary batteries, a couple of different solar options, but for right now I wanted to keep things as simple as possible. So I actually have this thing powered via AC right over here in one of the 3 AC ports, and when that thing is cooled down to a temperature like it is right now, let me turn off the lights for a second. This fridge is drawing basically 0 watts, sometimes 1, sometimes 2, but when it is cooled down to its desired temperature, it generally doesn't draw any power. Now on top of all of that, like I mentioned, I'm charging multiple camera batteries from DSLRs to action cameras, of course drone batteries. This thing has quick charging capabilities for DJI drones, which is what I'm currently flying. I'm charging different camp lights, little fans. I don't have these items in this current setup, but you could also power an induction cooktop. You could power an electric water kettle, coffee maker, and things like that. And this thing has so much power that it really hasn't been an issue. Now let's dive into the DJI Power 2000 and see some of the specs, some of the things that make it perfect for a setup like this. When it comes to this battery system, we are talking massive power capacity as well as expandability. We're looking at 2,048 watt hours of capacity, which will power most appliances and electronics for about 1 to 2 days. Since it is expandable, I could add up to 10 more batteries this same size, bringing us to a total of 22,528 watt hours, which could basically power a home. I'm of course using this in most camping scenarios, but if you had this battery system with a bunch of expansions on top of it, you could run basically any appliance in your house for multiple days. You add solar into that mix and you could almost possibly be off grid entirely. I might have to dive into a setup like that in the future, but right now we're mainly just talking about camping applications. With this setup, you can charge a cell phone about 114 times, a laptop for 18 charges. If you put this thing in a setup like a van, you could run something like a coffee machine for 110 minutes. That is a lot of coffee for yourself, your significant other, anyone who's with you, and basically anyone in the surrounding area. You could also power a microwave for 2.6 hours, or in my case, this thing that I relate to the most, a car refrigerator for 38 hours. Now, the actual runtime on a battery system like this is obviously going to change, especially when it comes to something like a refrigerator. We are slowly creeping into the summer months, and it's about 85 degrees here today, so if my fridge is sitting out in the sun, of course it's going to want to run more, and that is going to, of course, draw more power from the battery. Everyone's runtime is, of course, going to vary, and it depends on what you're actually powering with a battery system like this, but I've seen at least 2 days, and then with the help from a few more accessories that we'll get into, this thing could run even longer. Possibly, it could just run this thing off grid for days, weeks, maybe even months at a time. I'm still not sure quite yet. The DJI Power 2000 is all about high output power and device capability. This thing is capable of providing 3,000 watts of continuous output stably until it's fully depleted. So in the case of a blackout event, if you pull this thing into your house, maybe you need to power your refrigerator, it is going to deliver as much power as that thing is drawing, up to 3,000 watts, through the entire lifespan of the battery down until 0%. There won't be any power sag. It's not going to get low on voltage and cut off. It's going to give you everything that it has, which makes it perfect for emergency scenarios. Speaking of using a battery like this in those situations, it's going to be able to power about 99% of all of your home appliances. We're talking microwaves that are generally 800 to 1100 watts, an air conditioner, which will typically run at about 12,000 watts, a hair dryer, which draws a ton of power, we're talking about 1800 watts there, and even an induction cooker, whether it's like an air fryer or an induction stove top. Those things on the highest setting can typically draw around 2200 watts of power. So as long as you're not going over the 3000 watt limit on this thing, you could power multiple appliances off of this thing all at once, which is pretty cool. Now let's dive into some of the outlets just a little bit closer, other than the ones that I've mentioned. I said that there are 3 AC outlets on here, but I'm just talking about the standard plugs that you would find on basically any US appliance. But this thing also comes with a 30 amp plug on here, which means if I'm using this in a van setup, I could actually plug my Sprinter van into here as long as I set the power settings right on my vehicle, and I could use this thing to charge the batteries of my van, which is absolutely insane. You may also find 30 amp plugs on some really power consuming devices, like maybe washers and dryers occasionally, probably a welder and things like that. I don't think I'll ever be using the 30 amp plug unless it's like in the case of an emergency, but it is cool that it is an option. We of course have the USB-C outlets that I talked about. 2 of them are 140 watts, 2 of them are 65 watts. And then we have 4 standard USB-A ports, which will all output 24 watts of power. The charge port is protected by this little door here where you will find a nice 3-prong plug in there, and then even a switch where you can control the amount of power that this thing is drawing while it is charging. We're going to dive into that a little bit more in a second, and then over on the right hand side you will find 2 of DJI's proprietary SDC ports. Now with these ports, they're able to support very fast rapid charging. There are a lot of different accessories that plug into this thing to tailor it to your own needs. In my case, I'm currently using just a simple 12-volt plug as well as a solar expansion port over here. I also have a smaller single solar port cable right here, but there is a reason why I'm using that expansion port over there, and we're going to dive into that too. Another great thing about the DJI Power 2000 is that it supports ultra fast charging. When plugged into the grid, you can take this thing from 0 all the way up to 100%, and when we dive into the app, you'll actually be able to see more options where this thing supports ultra fast charging, which can get you up to 1800 watts. There are also some options for car charging, which unfortunately I do not have, but it would be perfect in my case for camping. There's an optional 1 kilowatt fast charger, which is good for vehicles as well as really fast solar charging. And with that accessory, you can get this thing fully charged from basically anywhere in about 145 minutes. Now, solar charging, like I mentioned, it does support up to 1800 watts of solar input as well. So it's not just grid, it's a solar with the right accessories. And with that much solar going into here, you can of course charge this thing up in 75 minutes, just like plugging it into the grid. There are some top tier safety and durability features that come to this battery as well. It's packed with LFP batteries, which provides a 10-year lifespan, about 4,000 cycles. There are 26 temperature sensors, 21 fuses, nano-coated BMS and inverter potting, which is going to be good for its longevity, especially in environments like this, because there are, of course, fans on the side. It gets a little bit dusty when you're out on the road. So having that protection internally is a huge plus in my book. It operates very quietly. The fan noises generally don't bother me. I typically sleep in here with fan noise on, like artificially on my phone. But for most people, I guess it is nice that this thing is really quiet. The fans are actually running right now, and I can barely hear it unless I like put my ear up next to it. This thing does have a UPS mode as well for instant switchover. We're talking less than 0.01 seconds. So like I said, in an emergency situation, if you have this thing tied into your house power, in the event that power goes out, this thing will immediately switch over and keep everything running the way that it should be. And then for the overall design of this thing, it is really rugged, it's heavy, it has two big grab handles on the top, and somehow they designed this thing to be able to support 1 ton of pressure on top of this thing. I actually saw a photo of a vehicle parked on top of this. So I guess if you want to get extreme, maybe I get the truck stuck and I need to get a tire back onto the ground, I could drive it up onto this battery if I really wanted to. I definitely won't be doing that, but it is cool that it is that durable. And then for my real world usage of the durability, this thing has been in my truck for a while and I have been bouncing off road all over the place. And because of the weight of this thing, it actually stays put. It lives over here in the corner behind where it's sitting right now. I leave everything plugged in all of the time. And there have been times when I got off of a trail, I open up my camper and everything in here is all disheveled and kind of thrown around, but this battery just stays put. I don't even have it tied down, although I could tie it down with the big grab handles on the side. This thing is just an absolute tank, and honestly, it's not even really all that scratched up. Now, when DJI went into designing this thing, just like the Power 1000 that I was previously using, they had a ton of real-world scenarios in mind, especially people like me in the overland and camping space. This thing has full-day support for lights, appliances, drones, etc. These SDC ports also support fast charging for all of the DJI drones, like the Inspire, the Mavic, some of the Airs. And this is exclusively what has been powering all of my aerial footage and photography for the past couple of weeks now. If you don't want to get too complex with different battery systems in a van build out, you could simply opt for something like this with a couple expansion batteries. And this is going to be able to power all of your appliances from refrigerators, coffee machines, Starlink, and anything that you would find in a more traditional van life RV setup like that. I think this battery solution could be a huge benefit for basically anyone out there who needs things powered. Now in my situation, especially with this camper, I'm still getting it dialed in and I'm trying to figure out the best way to keep this thing powered up all of the time. So previously I did have the AC plug right here plugged in, and then I ran it out the side of the camper. So when I get home, I can plug it into an extension cord and have this thing topped off. Now that was great until I was really consuming a ton of power on this recent trip and there was little to no solar. I do have a 100-watt solar panel on top of my camper, and then after about 48 hours going into the third day, this battery was getting really low because one, I don't have that car charger, which basically ties into your battery and allows you to charge this thing super fast while you're on the road. And since it was really rainy and the sun wasn't out all of the time, I opted for some more solar. So over here in my side compartment, I actually have a removable expandable panel. This was actually paired really nicely with my original DJI battery, and it works great with this as well. So that put me up to 100 watts of solar all the time, and occasionally when I'm stopped I could have up to 200, and I decided that wasn't quite enough. So I took it a step further, and yesterday I installed yet another 100-watt panel on top of here, and now as you can see, I'm drawing 148 watts, and I'm not even in peak sun right now. My camper is open, so my panels are pointed a little bit south right now, but when I have the camper completely closed and the sun is directly overhead, I can get very close to 200 watts of solar. And then if I'm parked, I just throw my removable panel out there and I'm getting close to 300. So I think this is going to be the most dialed setup going forward, but I'm gonna have to report back to you guys in a little bit and let you know. So I think this is hopefully going to be my kind of end-all be-all setup. We're talking over 2,000 watt hours of capacity. I'm going to leave the AC port on all the time, which will probably cause a little bit of power draw. There are little things throughout the camper that will draw kind of like phantom power. I have some lights on my AC plug. The USB ports up in the bed do draw like a tiny little bit of power, but in total we're talking about maybe 1 watt. Let's actually dive into the DJI app here, because this is something that I don't think was even compatible with the old battery. Maybe they made it that way now. But here you can see I am at 74% charge with my current solar input. We're looking at about a full charge in roughly 4.5 to 5 hours. That's of course going to change as clouds pass and things like that. I can monitor the entire system here. I can see how much power is being drawn from both of those SDC ports. And then if we go over to the output, this is where you can see all of your outputs for every single port on here. Now, if I scroll up to the top and click on the settings here, I can actually go into energy management. This is where you can set the recharge and discharge limit. They have options for a custom backup reserve level as well as a super recharge option. So if I plug this thing into AC when I get home, it will charge at about 1800 watts. And it's not always good to charge this thing at the highest capacity possible. You're going to shorten the lifespan a little bit. So generally I have the supercharging turned off. If it's plugged into a wall, I can wait a few minutes longer until it gets to 100%. You do have access to your voltage outputs down here as well. And then if we go back and dive into the general settings, this is where there's something that I wish would change just a little bit. The device screen timeout, I have that set to never, so this thing will always be displaying all of the vital information that I need. The screen on this, by the way, is super bright and very legible. The device timeout setting here, if there is no power going into or being drawn from it, you can have it set to basically turn itself off. And then the AC timeout, this is something that I actually like to set to never. That way, when my fridge is plugged in and it's cooled down to a temperature, it's actually not going to change. Think about at night when the fridge is already cooled and it's cooled down, staying at its desired temperature for longer than an hour. I don't want this AC to turn off, because when the camper heats up in the morning, it's not going to have power. So I have that set to never off. There could be a little bit of phantom draw from something like that, but I believe I have enough solar on here where it's really not going to cause an issue. Also in the settings, you have device info as well as firmware updates. I've had this thing for about a month now, and when you plug the accessories into it, you can update everything all at once. I've already done 2 firmware updates, which makes me feel good about this product because DJI is constantly improving it, and I'll be curious to see if there are any more updates in the future. One of them, which I would like to see, is since we can change settings in here for energy management, I can turn on supercharging. I wish there was an option to limit the amount of power draw other than just the switches on here. We have 1800 watts in the settings and then about 1200 watts on the device itself. I wish there was a custom option in here where I could turn this down to about 400 or even as low as 100 watts of draw. The reason for that is because I do not have the car super fast charger, and options that I have for charging this thing while I'm driving is simply a non-hybrid Toyota outlet in the back of the bed here. When I'm parked, this truck and most vehicles will output about 400 watts of power. When I'm driving though, it cuts it down to 100 watts of power. So in an event like I just experienced where there was little to no solar, I would have liked to be able to charge this thing off of the truck power. I have seen other battery systems out there that allow you to kind of adjust that threshold and make it a little bit lower. So hopefully that's something that DJI can push out in a firmware update in the future. That way I don't have to do all of the wiring that comes with the super fast charger, although it would be nice to be able to super fast charge this thing while I'm driving. That's really the only complaint that I have about this unit so far, and I think it's something that could be fixed in the future. So I believe that's all that I had for this brand new battery setup. Hopefully you guys learned something, and maybe you could integrate a battery like this into one of your own setups, whether it's a home backup battery system, a van or RV, or maybe even a truck camper setup like this. You could throw it in the back seat of your car and just go throw a ground tent on the ground, and this thing will power your camp setup for probably a week in that case. So that's all that I had for now. Hopefully this helped some of you guys out. If you have any questions on it, let me know in the comments down below. And again, if you're new to this channel, consider clicking subscribe because I make new videos every single week. Big thank you to DJI for letting me test out this battery system. I'm a big fan of it and I love what you guys are doing. So I'm excited to see some more innovation and even some firmware updates on products like this in the future. As always, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.